Two questions we've got to ask. The first question is everyone okay if we record the session? Can I just see by quick show of hand or virtual hand up? Are we all good? Okay,
All good.
awesome, thank you. The second question I'm bursting to ask is anyone following what's going on at COP26? It is so exciting. It's actually unbelievable. And has anyone seen David Attenborough's 7-minute talk?
Mm.
Wow. Wow, I was blown away watching that guy talk. I mean, I've been blown away by all his documentaries and things, but I loved how he just summed it up in 7 minutes and said there is one number that we've all got to watch, just one number, and it was the carbon density in the atmosphere. And he showed how the proliferation of humanity corresponded with the stability on the planet, the stability of the weather patterns. And he showed the period of time where it was not stable. And now we've had a long period of great stability. And right now we've caused great instability again. He didn't use the word Holocene, but my understanding is that that whole stable period is known as the Holocene period. And I completely loved the bit at the end where I mean, you can see President Biden's in there, and I think we saw the Prime Minister of Germany. There's a whole lot of prime ministers and leaders in there. And he says this is not about lots of generations to come. This is about your kids. And he said, without being united, we've managed to destabilize the planet, meaning without a concerted effort, humanity has managed to actually destabilize the planet. But it doesn't leave it like that. He said, imagine what we can do if we unite and collaborate. And he said, of course we can solve the problems. And then he actually looked at the audience and he was pointing at all these prime ministers and he said, that is why you are here. Have a great conference. And he walked off. Brilliant. You know, he
It
couldn't
was a
be
mic drop moment, huh?
jeepers.
So I
I
haven't
mean,
seen the scenario, but I actually believe that we've done more than not do something. The competitive process that we have developed with single products and constant competition where we don't share has been purposeful. So it's not going to be that easy to go from purposeful not sharing to collaboration.
It's almost by design, isn't it?
It has to be by design.
Yeah.
and
The
I
problem is
wonder if
caused by
we
design, maybe not,
It
not,
has to
you
be
know,
rectified by design.
I
that's right.
wonder if we have a choice, Jennifer. You know, you say it's not going to be that easy, but I have a feeling this is going to be one of the
No, I'm not
fastest.
suggesting we don't have a choice. I mean, I'm suggesting whether we choose to or not,
Yeah,
it won't make a difference because the situation that we've set in motion will continue. But what I'm saying is, as the world starts to say, are we collaborating or we need to collaborate? It's just not that easy. So it has to have actual things in place that make collaboration possible and create that change in mindset. So a lot of people in the carbon industry, in our industry believe in collaboration, but that's not the standard point of view. And you won't find people in the petroleum industry and saying, well, let's just share, let's just go out there and fix it because we all work together. It's not going to happen
And actually, I think
unless
this
they
is
change.
probably one of the best segues to exactly what I wanted to talk about, which is just fantastic. Not I want to talk about what we're going to talk about, but I wanted to introduce you to a thought. And so, Anthony, I couldn't have planned it better. So thank you for that perfect, intro. Today, with COP26 happening, with so much, so much change and a real engagement right across the different communities that's happening straight away. We wanted to do something unusual and bring in a level of just straight up politics and the political system into the conversation just slightly. And what I wanted to do this morning was give you a chance to actually break out very early. Like so Maurice just heads up in the next 5 minutes. We're breaking out groups of five or more, and we go for it. And I'll set a question for you. But right now, considering what's happening with COP26, considering that in Australia we are so set in a political mindset, I wanted to introduce you to a couple of things. And we normally don't do politics here, but I wanted to share something with you and see whether or not this is something that you have seen in the past. Maurice, am I able just to share the screen? Have I got the power? Not yet. All right, I'll take it. So let me just make sure I've got it here. There it is. So I'm just going to share my screen. That's why, if those of you who can see two of me, it's just so I can see what's happening on the screen when I'm sharing.
I thought that was just normal. I always see two of you.
Thank you. Appreciate that. Okay, there you go. I can see what is happening. There we go. Has anyone seen the Climate 200 before or heard of them? So just you feel free to unmute and just say if you have or you haven't, because
Simon Holmes Court.
Yes, absolutely incredible group of people. And it's not just, I mean, yes, he's in there, but the group of people that are running it are really extraordinary. I joined a meeting. I was very privileged to be invited by one of our group members. And when I joined, I didn't realize quite how much of a movement there is to create, one, to break that two-party system, but mainly focused on the independents who can make real change happen, and supporting what people are feeling, supporting families are feeling, supporting what the community's feeling by backing independents who will stand for climate change, for the climate future. And I just wanted to share this with you because this is, they're a really interesting organization. And then there's this other one, which I know Chris Doolan would probably be very interested in. This one here. This is a group that is the Australian Parents for Climate Change, or for Climate Action, so against climate change, for climate action. And one of our new members, so we've got two new members that have joined over the last month. So Chris Doolan, who's on the call, I'll introduce him in a minute, and Anamitra Murthy, who I don't think has joined yet, but if she doesn't, that's okay. We'll do an intro at a future date. But when we talk about, what are people and communities doing, and what can people do on a personal level, there is more and more action. And so and I think that this is something I'd love to hear your thoughts, Chris, because Chris Doolan has been working in this space separate to his actual business, but from a movement and from a family perspective with his children and the families in his area. I'd love to know just how many people here have seen this particular group as well. Anybody? Just call out if you have. No? And what's interesting is that there's not just one of these, there's many. And so when you take action, and I'll just stop my sharing and come back to everybody so I can see everyone's face. Here we go. And I think I'm back. When you, as a group, take action, not just in business, but in our personal lives, it actually can have such significant impact. And this is the time, we have an incredible moment in time right now to take action and find the communities that we link to. I mean, yes, we're opening up our borders, but it's absolutely incredible how much moving to digital, moving to Zoom and all of these sort of conferences where we can connect so easily with people right across the country and across the world. And it's just such a norm. We don't have to all just go, okay, we can't meet, then let's not do anything. Action can happen so easily. So what I would like to do is I'd like to, just open the floor to any comments, because I just wanted to start the journey for us today around collaboration, but not just collaboration from a business perspective, but about how do we change the actual system, the political system. So I know there's quite a few people on. Either put up your hand and take the floor, or I will call somebody out, because I definitely want to hear from Chris Doolan when he's got a moment as well.
I'm here, Bleb. Can you just tell us what the Australian Parents for Climate Change Action actually do?
They support and raise awareness and raise funds to put in political independence, to shift the political landscape. So in other words, put independents into parliament, or or local members and so forth, and they support them. So where they have a focus on climate action.
Got it. So this, sorry, I missed a little bit, but this is Simon Hosen, the courts.
No, that's C200. That's Climate 200. Yeah, the group of the Climate 200 is actually a fundraising body where they invest in the actual all of the media and everything that goes into getting voted in and so forth. So they get involved in all of that, all the campaigns and everything like that. So, and it's an expensive exercise. So when you have a look at that site, I just want to point you to that, because it's just some things shift your thinking when you look at what is actually happening in our political system, the amount of money that is spent to impact the way we vote. And when that money is spent to impact the way we vote for independents who stand for what we stand for, then things can really change, and that's what the Climate 200 group does. So, and there's not, and I'm not aligned to any. I just wanted to put up a couple just to get the thinking going, because I've got a particular question for you as we do a breakout. Anthony, go ahead.
If no one else has a question or a suggestion, can I just check first? Does anyone else have a question or a response to Vlad's question? Because if not, I've actually got quite a big one. Anyone
I've got a little
else?
one.
Looks like Jennifer George.
Yeah. Sorry, I just have a little one, and well, it's a big one, but there's a similar group in the United States. So I spent 20 years in the United States, and it is a climate-based group, and it's called the Future 500. And it actually works, it understands that there is a big business around maintaining and continuing this divisive politics. And again, once again, we can't underestimate the foe that is standing against us.
Yeah, and it is it's a financially very large one.
It's financially and politically extremely large.
Anthony?
I'm so glad that we have in the room one of the biggest all-time strategists in Australia, if not on the planet, Jack Jacoby. You haven't moved when I said that, so you're not being presumptuous, but yes, I'm referring to you. We have one of the most influential non-exec directors who is practically married to sustainability in the form of Julie Green. Chris Doolan, I've never seen someone more active in the first 30 days of entering the Symphony 7 community. Mate, you've got more ideas and energy than someone help me out with a metaphor. What's something with a lot of energy?
Energizer Bunny?
Energizer Bunny.
I want it to be a positive.
Here we go.
It's solar energy charged Energizer Bunny.
Then an MCG full of solar energized bunnies. We've got James McGregor, who's got a TV show, for goodness sake. Murray Cram knows more about Asia, Japan, and what's going on in Southeast Asia than most people. Raja Ratnam, you're so connected across the mining industry, and I know you consult for McKinsey's. You've got a number of things going on. You want to make the last, you said 15 years of your career count. I'm tipping that you're a bit younger than that, so I'm going to say 25 years. There are so many amazing people in this room right now. And if we think about the extended community, not just the Sustainability Hub, it's somewhere around 80 people now and growing in the Symphony 7 community.
Excellent. Congratulations.
Thank you, Jennifer. Really appreciate it. And if we then think that at the Sustainability Forum, the Circular Economy Forum that's coming up on the 18th of November, I think we're around 50 or 60 registrations. That will probably go to 80 or 100. And included in that group is 4 people who are coming from SS4C, Student Strike for Climate. They have collectively had 300,000 people turn up to strikes around the country, and they've got 150,000 members of their various social media platforms. And then also Parul from AIM, Maurice, you introduced us there. They've got 100,000 members, 50,000 of which are in Australia, all about mentoring young folks who are coming through. And now, Vlad, you've just mentioned an organization, Parents for Climate Action. If we add to that, we have a relationship with Greg Rudd, who's Kevin Rudd's brother. Greg wants to see amazing things happen on the planet, and so does Kevin. And Kevin is unbelievably well connected across the UN and across a whole range of different areas. So this group in the room today and in the extended community as of now has unbelievable reach and access to all kinds of people. I guess the question that's being asked is, can we organize quick enough? Can we self-organize quick enough to collaborate? And why wouldn't we work as a group to identify who are the independents, who are the politicians? This is no longer a this party or that party question. I believe this is a who's going to do the right thing by the environment and by the planet question, and the right thing by humanity question. And again, I was so excited at the start of this session to talk about David Attenborough. Another piece that stood out in his video, you see trees collapsing in a forest, and the wording that he uses to describe that is looking for short-term gains but failing to see the big picture. And when I saw that, I straight away thought, I wonder how many politicians are thinking, if I just stay with fossil fuels, I can get more votes, stay in power. But that's very short-term, isn't it? It's very, very short-term. It's not the long-term picture, and it's not going to look after my kids, your kids, and every other kid on the planet.
So Anthony, such a great question. And to that team, so one of the things that we will do in the very last hub is actually invite the C200 crew to come and talk about what that looks like for an education, not necessarily to support that, because again, we are not supporting any particular organization only, but from a thinking perspective of what can be done. And so what I would love to do at the moment is take this opportunity to give everyone a chance to meet, to talk. We'll do a first breakout. So Maurice, if you're ready in groups of 5, because we want to make sure we've got a lot to fit in today, as always we do, and there's a lot of collaboration. Today's focus, number 1, collaboration. And we're going to talk about one of the most exciting projects that's happening, where we've got 5 different members just from this hub already participating, and a number from others who are also here talking. We'll bring that up as soon as we get back. But what I'd like to do is ask you to break out. And this is a question that I want you to take away. We're going to go 10 minutes, just because we want to just make sure that we fit a lot in today. In 10 minutes, so groups of 5 or more. So think about that. So you're really talking for about 1.5 minutes, if you can. Give everybody the chance to speak, see what you're doing. What is it that you are doing to shift the conversation? Now, whether it's in Australia or globally, that's fine. What are you doing to shift the conversation? And I mean that from both a business perspective and a personal perspective. It's a big question. I know we didn't prep you for it, but this is how we roll here. All right. What are you doing to shift the conversation? Maurice, are you ready? Amazing. Click the join room buttons, everybody, and I'll see you back in 10. Hi, Maurice. We'll just pause the recording while everyone's in the breakout. So that's okay. In some rooms, people are going to go to the last minute. Obviously, the conversation is hot. Welcome back. Perfect. All right. Welcome back, everybody. Is that everyone? I think it is. All right. Hand up who wants to share something that they just were blown away by in the session before we jump into the next one. So put your hand up and we'll open the floor to you. There's like a little button there that's probably the easiest, or unmute and feel free to speak. Everybody's go ahead, Raja, unmute yourself and go for it.
I think the amazing thing that last week we left the breakout room from Ivana talking about, forget about the waiting for policies to come in, just do a private initiative and not wait for government policies to change and just get on with it. And I think that is such a good prompt. And I've seen companies now doing that. And I think individuals can influence. And Ivana has shown us an example and so has, I think, Stephen Todd. Really, I think that's really brilliant. Brilliant. Thank you for sharing that.
Thanks, Raja. Thank you for sharing that as well. Anthony, you got your hand up?
Yes, Vlad. Just on a question of synchronicities, you told me yesterday you've got a big surprise for me. You told me again this morning you've got a big surprise for me. When Maurice said, Anthony, Maurice didn't say anything. I said, shall I go to room 2? I said, Maurice, do you know what the surprise is? He said, no, I've got no idea. And Maurice says, Maurice, did you hand pick the rooms or did you digitally organize it?
It was totally automatic. So, did you see
the surprise? Vlad, does the surprise relate to Steve and Grant?
Grant, Tom.
Unbelievable, because the computer and the universe chose to put us in a room together. That's the surprise. Unbelievable. I'll leave it with you, Grant and Steve.
I knew you would appreciate that. And Grant actually knows Anthony, and when I spoke with him earlier on, he was saying, "Oh yeah, of course, 237. That's Anthony." I'm like, "How's it that live together in the same place, know each other for a long time, and it's funny how the universe works because we're so focused on collaboration." So,
that's actually extraordinary.
Jennifer, you've got.
Yeah, I just wanted to point out that Jack Jacoby made a good point about the best use of our time around political aspirations. Jack, would you like to share that for a minute? I'm just going to dump you right in it.
That's how we roll.
I'm used to being dumped. The question about putting the resources of Symphony 7 behind independent candidates. I understand the logic. I'm just wondering whether it's the best use of resources as an alternative. And the reason I say that is that not all candidates get up. Doesn't matter how much passion and goodwill there is. If they fail to get up, then you've pretty much wasted that effort for the next 4 years. As an alternative, Symphony 7 establishing itself as an independent climate adjudicator, if you like. What it does, it assesses all candidates, regardless of what side of politics they're on, and rates them according to their climate proactivity. And as an organisation, you will vote against any candidate who does not come up to a particular standard, whether it's 6 out of 10 or 7 out of 10 or 9 out of 10 or whatever it is, and you will support those that exceed that. And you may have 2 or 3 candidates in a particular seat who support that. You should be agnostic to the politics. The moment you support an independent, you're playing politics. Whether you like it or not, because it's the political environment. So how do you stay agnostic from politics and play politics simultaneously? So just something to think about.
Thank you, Jack, so much. And I think that's a really big conversation. And when everyone was in the breakout, what I was saying to Maurice and to Anthony just before he jumped into his surprise room was in the last hub, what I was really hoping to do in December was have a session focused on this, invite some of these groups where the Climate 200, the parents for climate action, and others that we feel are important. And I'll canvass over the coming month, your thoughts and so forth, and actually have that conversation. I think, Jack, you're right. And there's a lot of feedback. It would be great to have a session dedicated to this and to have that thinking and allow people to shift and, vote with, their feet, so to speak, where they want to put their attention. But always remembering that as a group, that Symphony 7 is, we are about collaboration and actually making things happen, especially like, Ivana said, we don't need to wait for policy. We can just get it done. And so with that, what I'd like to do is I just want to show and share with the group a large collaboration that has started over the last few months. There's quite a few of the members and other participants that are here on the call that, I'm going to call out and show, the kind of work we're doing. The ability of this group to make real impact is significant. We are, a collective that is not that small. It's just a Symphony 7 community. Anthony was saying like 80 members. The hub, we just got just under a dozen. This particular hub, but broadly, there are hundreds. When we communicate out and we make things happen, it's huge. Jennifer, who runs an organization called Nakudu, building a network where it's automatically linking people based on their interest to create impact. Extraordinary. And I've participated in a number of Jennifer's calls, and it's we've got these extended networks that can really make big impact. And so what I'd like to do, if everyone is happy with that, I'd like to share with you a particular collaboration. It's actually a consortium that's formed, so far quite loose. However, the work has already started, clients are already being approached. And I'd like to share with you how that's working and how many of the elements that we have discovered over the last, oh my God, it's 11 months already, over the last 11 months of this hub are coming together in this particular one. And there are many. There's probably, I think we've lost count, which is unfortunate, well over 50 collaborations that have kicked off. We're constantly members of meeting. But I'd like to share with you, I hope everyone's okay with this. I'm going to share my screen. That's why I can see everybody on my other screen. And I will introduce you to this, and we'll have a conversation. This is not just a straight presentation, but it is a segue into a conversation that's really important. This is a slide, highlighting a presentation we did to a client, a mining client. In this group, you'll notice there's probably 70% of the team are members of the 0-20-30 hub. And the idea is that we can, as a group, actually transform the mining and resource sector where they've got real impact, especially around fly ash, tailings dams, all sorts of environmental issues. And the team, as you look here, we've got from the members, Anumitra Murthy, who's a new member, she just joined recently, incredible, PhD in environmental resilience, has her own business, has worked in government, local government, and so forth. Tawab, who you know very well, and works closely with Matt Marsh and the Sebastian Group. We're focusing right now, I think there are four CRCP projects going in with different members of the hub and more broadly, all around impact, recycling, and so forth. James McGregor, who many of you know, absolutely incredible individual, highly connected as well into the mining sector and government. And in fact, James, I think yesterday you were running the workshop for the New South Wales government and those interested in the expressions of interest to create impact in the Hunter, I believe. Is that right? So do you want to just jump in? Was that what you were doing yesterday?
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, so we're leading a program for New South Wales government called Net Zero Hunter, which is about transforming the hunter economy to a net zero economy. Yeah, so we had a workshop yesterday with about 40 different companies in the Hunter region around sort of mapping out a roadmap between now and 2050 about what's got to happen in the region. And the idea is to make the Hunter, I guess, the Silicon Valley of net zero solutions. So we've got 170 million tons of coal goes out by ship out of the hub every year. The idea is to replace that with container ships, sending net zero solutions out to all those international economies that we currently supply energy to. So yeah, that was yesterday, and actually a number of the team were there yesterday as well.
Yeah, and that's right. And I'm surprised that Anumitra is not here today. So she must have been so big that she couldn't make it. Because I also
we worked them hard in the workshop. So
that's what I've heard actually.
Wow, jeepers!
It's pretty incredible, and and also quite a few of the members here know Raja and Jennifer very well. As I said, Jennifer runs the Nakudu network, which is an incredible platform for creating those connections automatically globally around specific skill sets, specific desires, and specific needs. Very impressive, and we've been incredible connections have come through this, especially when it comes to impact and particular technologies. And Raja, well, Raja is a long time in the resource space. He's run very significant teams and businesses, and highly connected with the mining energy sector as well. So when we came together with this team, the idea was that the mine sites, many of them, there's a lot of resource which is considered waste. So fly ash is one of those really topical conversations. And how do we take that and transition this site, that entire asset, not just by cleaning it up, so not just rehabilitating land, but how do we repurpose the infrastructure that's there? How do we also recycle that which would be considered waste and turn that into a resource? And how do we also regenerate the land? How do we sequester carbon? How do we use that land? And so really this 4R approach, it's a call to action for the team and a way to explain to the clients what the team does, but very much focused on the impact, aligned to the SDGs. And it's that kind of mixed technologies and mixed use of the land that's important. So, the kind of things that we talk about, we've got them here, interestingly, around piped hydro. That's one of the conversations that we were having with Grant Tom yesterday, Anthony. So you laugh. That's how that whole conversation started, and how I actually was able to invite Grant at such a fortuitous time. But the reforestation, carbon sequestration, we've got a number of members the technologies that help measure the sequestration of in the soil. We are working with teams who are creating new models for not just carbon credits, but digitizing assets with non-fungible tokens and so forth, to allow much more non-government investment and participation in creating that climate action, where the resources that, say, mine sites and others have can be utilized much more broadly. So lots of different technologies, lots of different approaches. And so before I jump into just put it back to everybody for the conversation, I just want to share with you something that Jennifer and I have been working on for quite a while, which is this idea of a net zero stack. So it's very much aligned with, there are multiple things that we need to do in order to create real value and new value from old resources, not just by cleaning it up and thinking, wow, that's just going to cost, but actually, how do we change that thinking in going, well, there is actually an ability to create much greater value if we do things differently, or if we integrate a number of solutions. So single goal, yes, reduce CO2. And the idea here, which I just wanted to share with you here, it's a large solar farms. And what's interesting too is James McGregor also has been extremely active in this space with lots of interesting experiences and case studies. And so the work that the team is coming together to do is focused on this multi-use solution. How do we, say, for example, create massive solar farms, but not just have that land just be wasted? How do we introduce grazing, introduce the carbon sequestration with grass, for example, improve the soil quality, collect water? Just with that particular one project is possible. And the idea is that there's two approaches. One is from a large rural site, so in other words, massive land and so forth, but there's also that same approach with that carbon stack, the net zero stack, with cities and where it's not rural, for example. So the rural stack, really straightforward. Here's an example. I won't go into it right now. What we'll do is we'll open up the floor and have some conversations with some of the participants, and have that broader conversation. But when we look at the rural stack, if we're creating hydrogen, for example, what are the elements also in that land to not just generate green hydrogen, but also, you see the goats, you see the grazing, water, carbon sequestration and so forth. And when we look at the urban environment, what is possible. How do we use the urban environment in a better way, especially when we're talking about, say, recycling and so forth. When we've got such a big push in development, those who are creating new developments, circular economy villages and so forth, how do they bring in recycled product into that urban environment to, one, reduce, sort of virgin material use, and two, really show that circularity and implement circularity in a real way, not just in putting the materials in, but then taking them out and reusing them in other ways. So I know that was just a quick one. I just wanted to really bring that conversation to the front. And maybe what I'll do is just, I'll open to Raja, because we've had the first presentation. Raja, what are your thoughts in this space? Because you know what the client's talking about. I want to also pass over to James, who's had some real projects in that mixed use land, and then Jennifer as well. So that kind of order, and then we'll just open it up. Yeah,
sure.
Right. Love to hear your comments.
I'll be very quick, because I think we touched on collaboration. So one of the key things I was looking for to collaborate, it would be nice to know what we're trying to do so we can pull the right people in effectively. It's all about the effective use of resources. So in this particular one, we're very targeted about coal assets, whether it's a mine or a coal-fired power station. And the question is, amazing amount of infrastructure already there. So the collaboration is, how do we actually repurpose that? And in each one of those, depending on which state you're in, there are different drivers. So we need to be flexible about what solutions we come up with. And people like Jennifer can bring in, partners who understand about how you can do multi-impact assessment, the digital twin approach, so that we can very quickly present a business case that takes into account of all these different aspects, whether it's political, whether it's indigenous land, whether it's resident, whether it's housing, whatever it is. Then we can very quickly come up with a package that we can then cost up and then attract investment, whether it's from the owner or from other investors, to get something done. What I find that once you have a focus as to what you're trying to do, it's easier to pull people in who are geared towards helping you achieve your goal. So I just want to leave it there, but collaboration with a target purpose is my whole thought.
James, what are your thoughts, especially with the mixed land, and maybe just even comment on, if you don't mind, just the size of the problem. I think this is important, because when we go to the next breakout, I'm going to leave you with a question, which is, what would be the team you would want to form to solve what problem? Like, what's the problem that you would like to form to tackle? And so I think it's important to identify, the size of that question, the size of that problem. And I think this is where this particular group came together, and it's open to others. It's not a closed group, because the problem is massive. James, are you able to comment?
Yeah, I think that idea that the problem is massive. So one of my mantras is sustainability is a team sport.
James, I think we lost you. We did.
He's turned it on mute.
Oh.
I'm off mute. Sorry, my internet's been a bit flaky this morning. So I was saying, one of my mantras is sustainability is a team sport, and a lot of these, and if you look at some of the greatest projects where they do sustainability really well, they're always extremely multidisciplinary, right? So you need that that finance capability, you need deep research or deep tech expertise. You might need someone who knows stuff about precious metals in fly ash. And no one organization has all the capabilities required to address some of these problems, because they're so big, right? So what happens is you see these half-assed solutions getting implemented because people know how to do that bit, but they can't do the rest. So I think when the idea of that collaboration is you bring in the mix of skills necessary to address really difficult problems, and let people put your best players in to do the best part of what they're great at. But as a team, you can address the entire problem across that, which I think brings a really strong value proposition, not only as a consortium to the end client, but also in terms of scaling that impact, because you have to work together on some of these things because they're so complex.
And we targeted the fly ash, we targeted mines that are shutting down. There's all these resources there. I mean, when we're talking about in the billions of dollars of impact, just what about New South Wales? How much are they like sort of looking at that? Like, it's how big of a problem is it?
For fly ash, well, if we look at, so we're doing work with the New South Wales government around developing up their strategy around low emissions construction materials, right? And so, I mean, just the housing sector alone is what's 40 odd billion for new homes, 36 billion in, so there's in renovations. So there's 100 billion marketplace just in housing. All right. So then you talk about infrastructure and commitment, there's billions of dollars going into roads and 9% of the world's emissions come from concrete. All right. There's a shed load of concrete that goes into the Sydney Metro that's going ahead at the moment. So there's no shortage of opportunities to extract value from these, for example, fly ash. I know Amitra's the fly ash guru. But fly ash is a primary, like we import fly ash at the moment into Australia because we can't get it because some of it's all locked up, which is crazy. And it's a primary input into things like geopolymers, which is 85% less carbon emissions than conventional concrete. So I guess the idea is to, with the connections of a consortium, you can then connect the dots and bring in the right players in to get these sort of projects up and going.
Yeah, and you really do need to play really quite broadly. I just want Raja, in terms of the mine problems, the size of the problem for mines across Australia, are you able just to comment on how massive that is?
Well, you can just imagine each of these assets were on book value billions, right? But they're depreciating very quickly. So it's a massive problem for the companies. Also, massive problem for the regions that are basically employed by these organizations. So the order of magnitude is quite large. The question is, you can turn that around from a stranded asset to a very productive asset very quickly. And all these companies, month on month, they are seeing significant. The coal mines are still okay at the moment because they are still exporting coal, but the coal-fired power plants are losing money hand over fist right now. So they are very significantly motivated to repurpose their sites, right? So you're talking like to build
high, right? It's like
a power plant that size to build one nowadays would be $5 to $7 billion. That's how much it costs, that infrastructure, right? Now it's depreciating very quickly, of course. And if you look at the book value, and you saw how the government sold Vallis Point and all that to the private enterprise for just a ridiculous amount, right? Because on book value, those coal assets are really, very few people would like to touch them. However, entrepreneurs, if we can get people involved and say, look, these can be productive assets, they can have an amazing, a new life, if you like, right? Repurpose. So certainly there's nothing there to say that it's not a doable thing. And the question is, there are some political things that we have to play with and get the right people behind it. So that's our biggest challenge. Is technology-wise, as James said, we are so blessed that within the network of people we have, there's very, very great amount of skills, specialist skills that we can offer. The big fours can't. Whether you're talking about PwC or KPMG, I guarantee we can pull the smart people together in terms of expertise in each of those areas, that they cannot match. And that's what we offer, right? And not only that, hopefully, all the people that we pull together have got a common goal. They're not just to make profit, but profit for good, as Anthony and we talked about. I love the fact that we are profit for good because we practice good business principles. So making profit is not bad.
So maybe we'll do one more handover and then I'll open the floor for comments and discussions. Jennifer, that is you, yes. So one of my favorite commercial thinkers, who's worked in this space a long time, and how do we, when we approach this problem, we really looked at it from that. That zero stack approach. What are the elements that we need to bring in? Do you want to sort of comment about how important that is? And I know you've got a guest here today as well that's really in that space.
Yes, I stole one of his photographs for my slides. So thank you, Vlad. I've been commercializing sustainable tech for 15 years. And I started with the big corporations in New York, and now I'm doing it here. And it's so great to say that it is the moment in time where we must act, because it has been an uphill fight for so long, right? And so this is really a moment when we all should be called to action. And it is, and what is that action? Because we can't just follow the people say, or the politicians who just say that they want it, that they want, some kind of a change. We have to look to connect with the people who can do it, or who have a viable solution. And we all need to challenge those questions. Will that work? Is it complete? Because there's a lot of, someone told me about something new that they discovered the other day. It's called greenwashing. And I'm like, no, that's not new. It's been around a very, very long time. And it's just that now it's very popular, climate change is very popular. We need to make sure there is no greenwashing in what we do, and make sure that we come up with really viable solutions. So I just wanted to note on the fly ash, there's 3 levels of fly ash. So there's premium quality, which is in short supply, which we actually import, but there's 2 lower levels, which we have in abundance. So we need to create inventors who can extract and create new value from that lower level. And part of the work I do is to work with inventors and all of the universities across Australia to try and find those new innovations. When we start to set our mind in a certain way, it actually then provokes innovation. So I want to introduce Stephen Todd, who is from Volt Pharma, who is where I stole the pictures of the solar panels and the goats. He and I have been unknown to each other, thinking of the same way for probably more than 10 years. And what I want to say about that is that once we start implementing that multi-level answer, that kind of looking at property as a long-term value, then we can actually say, well, okay, if these solar panels expire their useful life in 7 years, or are they 20 years, we need to choose the right ones as a starting point. We need to do it better. But we can also say, do they need to stay there if they're going to have acres? Now, it's going to be 124 square kilometers of power of solar panels that need to cover to produce 5,000 gallons of hydrogen per day.
120, that's just insane.
It's like the equivalent of 3 pastoral properties.
120 square kilometers.
And that's the, when you see it as a slide, it's always showed as 2 solar panels or something that's quite manageable. We will be creating, especially in the Hunter, a massive change in the way that area looks. It's not going to be rural, it's going to be solar. If we kept with the single-use solar panel model, we would be creating all this usable land and taking it from a carbon sink and making it into a solar panel farm, which of course has its value, but I don't know that it offsets from that multi-level thinking. So I just think that looking at the way Stephen has been working at it for a long time and being persistent with building the animals, we can also then create innovations. For example, if the solar panels have to be replaced in 7 years, let's build a system that actually extracts the solar panel footings out and moves them somewhere else. And that because we've actually regenerated that soil and we've created new usable soil, because soil will be a shortage, good land will be short by the time we're looking at. But the other thing is that currently shade has no value. I want you to think about that. The solar panels create massive amounts of shade. And if we currently have no shade, has no value, if temperatures increase to over 50 degrees in some of these areas, shade will have a significant value. It will mean that we will change the agricultural features of that land, where the salinity of the soils will change because of the heat. There's a massive amount of different value could be extracted if we start to model in the future. Sorry, that's my passionate thing. So,
and it's true, Jennifer. So I think that's really important. This kind of this mixed use, and you touched on a couple of things that are important, especially around soil. And one of the guests I have today is very specific to this conversation. When we talk about the journey that you've had and many of us have had was discovering technologies where you go, there's things already there to solve what we need to solve. It's not like everything has to be created from scratch. You know, we have this conversation in many groups, you know, like let's use what's there and bring it to the table. Let's implement it. And so I want to introduce Ross Hughes in just 1 second, but I know Chris Doolan's had his hand up a few times and I haven't missed you, mate. It's just, you know, as the conversation going, do you want to just jump in, unmute yourself and just drop a comment, what you want to
Just
ask?
a quick one to hopefully throw some kerosene on the fire that you're creating, which I think is awesome. I had a great meeting yesterday with the head of innovation for supplies for BHP, and they are hungry for this stuff. So I'm happy to introduce you to this guy, great bloke. So they are right in the middle of it, and they're now looking at orchestrating that similar program with Rio Tinto, and I've got the best and the brightest in the mining industry, this organisation, in order to deliver. So just growing from where you've started there.
Thanks, Chris. And, you know, I just want to just let everyone know that Chris, when he joined, Anthony wasn't understating it or wasn't overstating it. Chris's amount of energy when it comes to impact. Chris runs a business where they create, you know, they import, you guys import workwear that avoids landfill. You know, it lasts for significantly long periods of time, doesn't need to be just chucked out all the time, stops this cycle of constant, you know, wear, throw. It's not fast fashion. But separate to that, the connections with all of the movements, the impact, both from family perspective and the community, it's absolutely extraordinary, Chris. So, you know, we're very lucky to have you.
Thank you.
Thanks, mate. Now, all right, so I was going to just, Steve, I know that Jennifer introduced you as well. What I will do, I want to give Ross some airplay around a particular topic, especially around the Duracrete. However, maybe you can say a couple of words, especially around the picture with the goats. We love the picture with the goats. It's one of my favorite. Stephen, do you want to just have a few words quickly?
Yeah, I just wanted to say,
so much
I'm actually an active regenerative developer, so we combine solar farming with carbon farming, green hydrogen production, bioenergy. So we've got anaerobic digesters. We work with the local community around education. We create behavioral change through involving the community in the actual investment of the projects. So we more than combine the solar farm with carbon farming. We actually have plant material that goes underneath the panels and takes advantage of the shade. We've got active carbon farming drawdown projects all over Australia, where we sequestrate carbon and we leave the soil in a better state. So we're actually doing what you're talking about. We're building one on the Mornington Peninsula, if you're interested to look at it. It's called the Jumana Climate Smart Farm Project.
Awesome. Stephen, would you be really kind enough to drop in the chat just maybe a link to it so that we can share it? And that way also, because we record it and share it more broadly, others can also you know, reach out to you, see what that is. Thank you so much. It's fantastic. Maurice, would you do me a favor, please? And Ross Hughes, would you be able to make him co-host? Because I wanted Ross just to show a couple of slides as I introduce him. And what we'll do straight after this, we'll do a breakout. And I've got some questions for you as well. But I wanted to show you, especially on the topic of, you know, 26 years in the market globally, yet in Australia, we're not using this. This is really quite extraordinary. Yeah. Ross, are you there? Are you able to unmute yourself and
sorry.
That's okay.
Often does that happen? How many people have spoken to a mute on a Zoom call?
Just
Hi,
today?
everyone.
Or, yeah.
Oh yeah, you know, totally. Okay, well, Vlad, thanks for having me and everyone. So this is my first time in this interesting organization. So yeah, Michael.
The last either. This is drinking from a fire hydrant is what I sort of said to you when.
Well, yeah, I've done that once or twice in my life, so I get it, no problem.
Welcome, Russ.
Thank you very much. So, and if I get this wrong, apologies in advance. So I basically met Mike a couple of weeks ago, and we had some pretty interesting conversations, as you can imagine, like most people probably do with Mike McElligott. And then Vlad and I had a really interesting conversation last night, and he said, "Hey, come and do a presentation about what you're doing." I was like, okay. So, which is all good. But yeah, so I'm going to try and keep this brief and not sort of get too much down in the weeds for you. So, but I guess the interest is in an approach to help improve or reduce resources and impact and carbon emissions and so forth. So in that term, has some relevance. So let me get into it if you don't mind. So I'm just going to share my screen. Let me just. Right. Now. Okay, can you see that little PowerPoint doc that I've got there with the CMS in the top right corner?
Go for it, mate. Perfect.
Okay, so let's see how quickly I can do this. So I guess a way to start this is to kind of go back to the beginning. So I'm part of an organization called CMS, Civil Materials Science in Australia. And what the problem that we solve, I guess simplistically, is reducing the materials, the time, and the costs around civil engineering, infrastructure, and construction projects. Now, that's most basically the built environment. And through that, what might be of interest to your organization is reducing carbon emissions and materials, basically natural materials and so forth. So to give you an example, imagine a road, whether it's a mining road or a regional road or whatever, an estate, a residential estate, industrial estate, it goes on and on and on. Time, machinery, labor, and lots of cost in removing the existing soil, digging it up, putting it in trucks, transporting it away somewhere and dumping it. And then basically replacing that soil with quarry material, rocks, gravel, aggregate, basically gradually demolishing a mountain or a hill somewhere, and building up what's called the base course. So that might not be particularly sexy, but it is, if you kind of look out your window, that is the base of pretty much everything around you. And it takes up an enormous amount of materials and energy and emissions. So our approach basically enables civil engineers to use the existing soil and stabilize it with cement and essentially eliminate what I just talked about. So the crucial difference is this product Duracrete, which is a cement additive. It modifies how cement works and improves the cement and basically enables the cement to bond with dirt at the existing soil and thus, as I say, eliminate that need to remove all the soil and replace it with quarry material. So how much can that improve? Actually, I should be going through this PowerPoint. I forgot about that bit. So this is sort of, I'll catch up. So you can improve, I mean, there's a bunch of variables, but in costs, you can reduce costs by in excess of 20%, and the production time by a third, possibly more. I'll be conservative. So this product Duracrete, it's non-toxic, it's not nasty. You could, basically put your finger in it and put it in your mouth. It's mineral based. It's permanent, but it's also can be recycled. It can also be used to recycle road materials or other materials to build a base or to build roads and so forth. So it thus basically reduces carbon emissions by just reducing the amount of machinery and work, but it also reduces the vast amounts of materials that are required. This is, as Vlad mentioned, it's been around for 25 years. It was developed in Germany. I came across it in my previous life when I was working overseas. It's been used in all sorts of environmental conditions, soil conditions, climatic conditions, all parts of the world, and over 4,000 projects to date. So, oh, hang on, and I kind of keep forgetting. So I forget the PowerPoint. So quickly, here's like a very simple schematic of if you were doing any sort of normal project. conventional way you can see on the left of each of these, so where you'd have to remove the soil and then bring in other materials and more costs. And on the right with the green, you can see where the existing soil is stabilized. So that's a really basic concept. And then the strength, this is sort of gives you an idea of different sorts of soil types. So it works with clay, works with sand, it works with silt, et cetera, et cetera. So you can actually get a significantly stronger difference. And it sort of also addresses the basic question of, well, why don't we just use cement always? It's a bit technical, but simplistically, there's limitations to how much cement you can mix in with dirt in a conventional approach. And that's what this Duracrete overcomes. So there's more to this, but I just wanted to sum that up. And one last point, sorry, Vlad, is it's a whole separate conversation, but this can also be used in concrete to improve concrete and or reduce the amount of cement used in concrete. So that's it. Not sure how many minutes that was.
No, that's amazing, Ross. And when I saw this, and I know there's a lot of technologies, and I can guarantee there are questions coming up, especially around the the technical aspects. I know Jennifer, when I mentioned that you were jumping on, she was like, "I've got questions."
Sure.
I guess but one of the things that I think was really interesting is one, it potentially can take soil that is contaminated and lock in that
true.
Right, and that's really interesting. And the reason, and there's some barriers to this, right? So some of the barriers that you mentioned is that to be able to use this more broadly, you've got to get the accreditation from the ARB. It's only been a couple of years that you've been trying to bring this into Australia. Your main focus right now is to get the demonstration projects, right? To find sites, locations,
Yeah. I mean, the short answer is yes. So most people wouldn't know. So ARRB is this organisation that each of the state road board, like Vic Roads, TMR in Queensland, etc., each state government road department, they, as I understand it, created this organisation between them called the Australian Road Research Bureau or Board. And essentially it's a body that's allegedly sort of independent to certify materials and so forth. That is simplistically what you need if you're trying to sell it to state or sell something to state government road departments. Private sector, mining, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. No, you don't. That's just because state governments like to sort of be covered by things. And we've looking at that, but it's a long and expensive and complicated process. So that's ongoing. Yeah.
But interesting, I think that Ivana, especially, like you're probably one of the very strong proponents on this call around the circular economy, right? And Anna Mitra, who was one of the key people in that mining consortium sort of focus, circular economy, living labs, circular economy village, circular, everyone's circularist. Who else? I mean, we've had the full range here. We support so many. This is, when we find something that can take, say, even construction material, cladding, the recycling of cladding, compress it, bind it, and find ways of testing that. I mean, doesn't that fit perfectly with that circular economy approach, right?
Yeah, I think so. For sure.
Ivana, you wanna?
Yeah, no, I completely agree with everything you just said. So finding those solutions and fitting it in exactly how we need to and collaborating where we can is exactly how we're going to get this rolling and get everything moving forward.
Yeah. And I guess so any other questions? Because I mean, I know what Grant is looking for is those test sites. Is looking for organizations that are interested in trialing this out, get some in there. So whether it be contaminated land or road projects construction. Right?
Yeah.
Ross?
Yeah. I mean, there is, as you say, it has been used essentially to simplistically to seal contaminated soils so they don't leak. And there is, as you say, I mean, it's been used in other parts of the world for sites for wind farms and solar farms and that. But even if you kind of step back from the very very, very sort of environmentally orientated things. It's even just the mundane. I think the broad sort of solutions is, well, there was one originally, and then another one that was developed by an academic at Griffith University here in Brisbane. And if you think of what originally attracted me to this was the tyranny of distance in Australia. So when I've spent time in regional Australia on a drive with my dad as a kid, I always thought, who came out all this way and built this road in the middle of nowhere? And what insane amount of materials and time and effort. And so simplistically, if you just think, instead of all those insane tons of gravel and quarry material and concrete or whatever being transported out to those locations, all you basically need to transport is the cement and a very small amount of this additive, and you can use the existing soil. So the savings are enormous. The other side, like I say, Griffith University, an academic there, has been all over it. There's a couple of universities that have been really helpful here in Australia. But he also had figured out that it's also got a benefit for stabilizing what these areas, poor quality soils like silts and things like that. But it's another conversation.
Wonderful. Jennifer? Oh, sorry, Ross.
No. I'll give you one last. I'm talking too much, but I'll give you one last sort of little anecdotal, an example of what the metrics are. So there was a mining project done in Indonesia with this. The client actually is an Australian. It was an Australian from QUT and used to work with Thies. Was the name I was trying to remember yesterday. Vlad.
Thies, yeah.
Yeah. So and. Basically, it's a mining company in East Java, and they wanted to do essentially not so much the mining road, but a community road, 6-kilometer road. They wanted to rebuild it as a bit of a CSR project with concrete. And this is, an environment that gets lots of rain, monsoons, etc. Pretty important for that part of the country. And it was going to take them 3 months to build this or rebuild this road with concrete. That came across this product, went through all the trials and everything. And then they said, okay, let's use this Duracrete cement. And 6 kilometers, what would take 3 months to do in concrete, they did in 20 days. So
that's phenomenal.
Kind of just a simple sort of, you can kind of work out the basic metrics of the savings and lack of just, reduction and disruption and all the other stuff.
Oh yeah, thanks, Ross. No, I appreciate it. Jennifer, did you want
to? Yeah, thank you, Ross. That's really interesting. I have seen road surfacing done before in this, not in exactly this way. This is used as minerals, I believe you said, and what I saw was using microbials and enzymes, etc., those kind of things, but they have long duration. So and I did see that the clay provides the best surface, the best results for you. So my question is about the minerals and the duration of the roads once they're created. How long do they last? And what evidence have you done for trialing that?
Sure. So the product's been around 25 years. It was first developed, as I say, like in about 1994, I think, or 6 in Germany. So there's projects around since then. It is essentially a permanent product. It's not a polymer or something that's going to sort of change with rainfall or so forth. Essentially what I said, because it's working with cement, so it binds with the cement. It's a mineral base in that it's not sort of some sort of petroleum or chemical or anything like that. So, but in terms of strength and durability and longevity, the extremes, I'll give you a couple of quick anecdotes. In Canada, they've used it in mining roads, a bunch of projects. As back as, well, one that I can think of, or a number that I can think of, were put down 12 years ago. And these are roads where those giant Caterpillar, I think they call them 797s, the big mining vehicles run over them 24 hours a day. Now, fully loaded, they're 450 ton, I believe. And they're running, as I say, 24 hours a day in winters in Alberta that get to like minus 20 degrees, summers that get up to 30 degrees, pretty insane sort of conditions. And they've come back more than a decade later and taken core samples. And I mean, simplistically, it looks like concrete, but with the coloring of the soil. And
sounds
like,
really interesting.
Yeah, I mean, to give you a bit of a thing, like why, like, so, and I'm not a mining engineer, but generally the mining roads and mining infrastructure, they have to grade it regularly, run a grader over it again and again. They basically have issues with dust, which is a pollutant in its own right and an issue in those areas. And depending where you are, in wet conditions, the roads deteriorate, they lose productivity to rainfall and damage. But here's even just one sort of not very sexy metric that they found. So a mining truck, as I understand it, those enormous tires cost something like $40,000 each. So, and you think there's probably 6 on a mining vehicle and how many's in a fleet at a mine site. By stabilizing the soil, they basically reduce what's called roll resistance, which extends the tire life by 20%, reduces the dust, improves productivity and production, reduces all the damage and even probably fuel economy of those vehicles. That's one sort of simple example.
And Ross, I'll just pause you there for 1 second. Anthony, I'll come to you. Like, Hong, you've had your hand up for quite a while. Did you want to ask, do a comment or ask a question, Hong?
Yes, I do. Thanks, Vlad. So I think just want to double check. You mentioned about government roles, and then I think you mentioned about it. Have you got an approval from the government to do urban roads?
No. So as I was saying, so simplistically, most councils and so forth, or this is more, I've had more experience in Queensland talking to people than other states, but generally local councils will, and this is a generalization, will say, does it have, for example, in Queensland, does it have TMR certification? So TMR is Queensland Transport Main Roads, and TMR, and this is why I've talked to these people, will say you have to go get the ARB, Australian Road Research Bureau certification, which comes under what's called types, which I can't remember what that stands for. And that's basically, the shorter answer is it takes a couple of years and a whole bunch of money and time and so forth, and we haven't completed that yet. But I've found, if you go to Brisbane City Council or a big city council, their appetite for what might be perceived as something new or unfamiliar is pretty low. But if you think of regional councils and small councils with lots of roads and lots of distance, they generally might have a bit more of an appetite for solving problems.
So one of the biggest things I think you'll face here is the other option is doing nothing, because, and I know that practically it would make more sense to actually surface the roads, but a lot of people will say, well, the roads there, it works to X%. So, that will, so I'm just saying that would be what you might have to
for sure.
face up against.
Yeah, there's plenty of people who like the status quo. I mean, there's also vested interests. So if I have had these, talk to the head of infrastructure in a regional council or even, and they'll say, yes, we do have too many roads and not enough money, and they get damage. But you need to talk to our head of, or our contractor. And that contractor basically has a contract to regrade the secondary and the sort of tertiary roads, forget the sort of fancy, nice roads. And if you said, well, here's a way of stabilizing it and you won't need to grader it again for the next 10 years, they're like, well, actually, I like gradering it each week because it keeps me employed. So go away.
Wow.
Ross, you're talking about the biggest barrier and issue in everything we're doing in transformation. This is it. In every area of our life, in the government, in all the projects, always that question of where is the money actually flowing? Who's impacted if we implement this? Someone moves out, but how do we transform? So part of the conversation is very much about how do you bring people along for that journey as well. And I think that's the important one, what Jennifer's saying. Yeah. I do want to just let Anthony, you've been so patient. And maybe what we'll do after this comment, I want to do a breakout, give you guys a chance to talk, everyone, the team, the opportunity to break out, have some conversations. I've got a good question for you. Follow the money. That is it. Anthony.
Yeah, exactly.
Go for it, man. You're on mute though. Yep. Yeah.
Yeah, just unmuted. Ross, quick question. If I understand correctly, the use of your solution is going to reduce, well, I picked up clear as crystal, it's going to reduce the amount of transportation required because you're going to use the local soils to build everything. You don't need to bring stuff in from a quarry, and you don't need to take stuff out, dump it somewhere else.
Yep.
So you're going to reduce transportation, you'll reduce emissions through all of that, you're reducing costs for the project, you're reducing carbon emissions large scale, if I understood, with every major construction of a building, of roads, of runways. Is any of this involved in the construction of housing?
Oh, well, not so much a house, but if you think of residential developments and estates, and like in Queensland, you got the north, around Brisbane, you got North Lakes and Springfields and that. All those, if you take a big development, the first thing they've got to do is do all the roads and canals and footpaths and all the stuff around that. Yeah.
And all of that circular economy, village stuff, and if you remember our last call, Laura from Living Buildings Challenge, livingfutures.org. This is exactly the kind of thing that they're looking to implement in those solutions.
Yeah, I was going to say that. I mean, the property development again, doing lots of greenfield development, broad subdivisions. That's why I asked Ross that question. What has been certified by local government and by Vickers in Victoria. When you're ready, let me know. Happy to do introductions to those land developers here in Victoria.
Sure. Oh yeah, I mean, Hong, we can have a chat and I can tell you a bit more and so forth. I mean, simplistically, in my experience, I find there's a couple of things. When people say, well, who do you want to talk to? Who's your audience? And that. The range of organizations is quite broad, but just think of anything that has a sort of civil engineering element to it, whether it's a mining company or a mining infrastructure, to canals, to runways, to all sorts of things, to agribusinesses, to wind farms. But generally, I find it has to be someone senior enough that it's in their interest, like the P&L and costs is their interest. Someone a bit junior, I find they'll say, oh, yeah, but they're kind of thinking, if I tell my boss about this, will he think I'm an idiot? But that's a broader thing about risk aversion.
Yeah, and those that can take a chance, like say like a mine site that they're doing this, they can trial this out. So, or a major project out, regional. I think that's where, we're having these conversations. And, one of our other guests today, Grant, that he'll be speaking after our quick breakout, same thing. It's like we're talking about how do we get this trial? How do we find something that's being used? 4,000 plus projects, 26 years. It's not new. Why are we not testing this out? Who would test this right now to fast track, one, the certification of this, because it's awesome, and two, how do we, make sure that we start doing those demonstrations on the journey to that certification? Raj, I see that your hand, and then this will be our last one, Ross, and then we'll do a breakout because I know you need to leave. So I really appreciate the time. You're on mute.
Just a quick one. The theme you raised, that what I can't understand, where technologies have been used elsewhere outside Australia, and and quite reputable companies, and governments using it.
The American military,
why is that?
Pretty big organizations.
Why is that we have to reprove all these bloody things again here? I don't understand, and I get this all the time. What is it? What is it with this mindset? Can anyone help me there?
Anybody?
I can. Well, I actually, the short answer is
They need to be educated.
Well, yeah. If you actually
learn.
If you're interested in this, Raj, like really the science behind it, look up what's called prospect theory, sometimes called risk aversion theory.
Everybody's busy writing down. I can see everyone's notes.
And I stumbled upon this in my previous career when before I got into this. And I used to, you'd be in a situation in a company or whatever, and it's like, here's a problem, and everyone can see the problem, and you're like, well, let's, and I remember this, like my boss saying, hey, why don't we do this? And they're like, nah. And the short answer is like, well, most people are like, if I do nothing, I will not get in trouble. But if I advocate something and there's a tiny chance it goes wrong, it'll be my fault. So I'm going to do nothing.
And that's
And
why
like I
they
say,
use
it's
big companies instead of small too, right?
yeah, it's like that's why you don't get fired for hiring McKinsey. But so there's actually a whole science. So if you look up prospect theory, I can't remember the name of the two gents, but it was the first or the only non-economist to get a Nobel Prize for economics, and it's actually behavioral economics, and it was done back in the 1970s for that. And it basically says that when you look at a decision, the prospect of losing $10 is multiple times more influential than the prospect of gaining $10. So, like I say, so it's like you can say, here's this thing, it's been tested, it'll measurably save this amount of money and do all these good things. And that person's thinking, yeah, but I have to go learn about it and I have to advocate it and I have to do some reading and I have to trial and maybe my boss will think I'm an idiot. So, no. So it's called prospect theory. I read about it. It's explained so many things that I was puzzled about.
And look, we've got the next half an hour. In that half an hour, there's two things I want to do. I want to give everyone a chance to go and talk to each other. And the question I want everyone to talk to each other about is to really take inspiration from the conversation today. If there was a problem you could solve, whatever you're working on, what does the team look like? What do you need? Is it tech? What is the thing that you think can't be done, but actually you meet somebody like Ross and we'll meet somebody like Grant and we'll meet other people in this team. When suddenly, if you could find that, what would be that difference? So when you break away, ask yourself this question. If there was a team that you could form, what is the problem that you would want to solve? And what would those people look like? What do those members look like? What do you need in there? Just have that conversation, share that amongst yourselves. Maurice, we're going to do groups of 5 again. If anyone's got smaller groups, don't stress, we'll join you. Ross, thank you so much. Have a look in the chat as well. People are dropping their numbers, asking to connect. And when we come back, we'll share that. And we've got Grant continuing this mind-blowing technology and solutions piece that is there to be done. And you're just wondering why the hell no one's doing it right now. So thank you so much, everybody. Off to the chats. Talk, and we'll see you back in, I don't know, a few minutes. We're going to keep it short, probably 5 minutes, 1 minute each. Go for it.
Thank you. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks so much, mate. Amazing. Ross, just mind-blowing. This is going to be,
no worries.
When I talk about drinking from a fountain, this is your space, my friend.
I've done that before. Glad we'll talk more.
Thanks, Ross.
Thanks so much, Ross. All the best. Thank you, guys. Jump into the rooms, and we'll see you back pretty quickly. Probably about 5 minutes or so. See you, Hong. Good job.
Right.
So yeah, feel free to drop off whenever you like. Ross, thank you so much.
There's a couple of messages I just got to copy.
No, don't rush. Don't rush. And I know that Anthony is going to definitely want to have a chat with you, potentially even Maurice, because the network is such that it would be really helpful. By the way, just Maurice, if you're able just to pause record as well, that'd be great.
Anthony, did you want to, was it you just?
Yeah, Ross, I've just stayed behind without going to the room because I actually want to ask you, maybe in a separate chat, who you need to meet, because it sounds like you need to meet people in the construction game. It sounds like you need to meet people in government, and we can probably help a lot with all of that. And if we connect you with people and your projects go ahead, humanity wins, the environment wins, Symphony 7 wins.
Yeah. So, I mean, for all the obvious reasons, government's generally more bureaucratic and more risk averse than the private sector. You know, private sector is much more about profit and loss and does this work or doesn't this work? As I say, there's, you know, the industries, you just start to think about anything that has that sort of infrastructure, civil element to it. But I find, again, the bigger the organization, the slower they are. It generally, like if you talk to the head of BHP, or it'll generally always end up coming back to the civil engineer, because the CFO will say, look, I get it, I like it, but the civil engineer needs to tell me whether this will work or not.
Always.
Invariably. Yeah. And then the other thing is I sort of meant, sorry?
What about developers?
Yeah, exactly. So developers, the same thing. Like, so I'm in Brisbane, so the ones up here like Springfield and so forth. But
it's like Hong
again, like within there, it'll start with someone who's a decision maker, and then they'll say, well, let's get the civil guys to have a look at it. It's also like there's a project that we're looking at this up near Maroochydore on the Sunshine Coast, but it was so many different, it was basically, there was so many different parties that no one had like enough of a vested interest and or a decision to kind of do it. So it generally works if there's not too many parties involved.
And you need to appreciate
but
the
won't
reality.
Want the developers save money?
No, yeah, that's the basic thing. Yeah.
No one, just like what Hong was saying, the fact that there's this benefit and that it's been out for 20 plus years, 4,000 plus projects, all sorts, because there isn't certification in Australia of the product, no one's going to touch it unless they're doing demonstration project or they're doing projects where lives aren't at stake, no one's at risk. Do you know what I mean? So they look for, give us certification.
Yeah, like I say, private sector, it's not as
ignorance, but why don't you get it certified?
Well, it takes time and money, is the short answer. As I said, the ARB, this organization, I've had a couple of long conversations with them and they're very interested, but it's a couple of $100,000 and a couple of years and so forth. I mean, but that's why, and that's, the shorter answer is that's in process, but I'm not going to hold my breath while that happens and if it happens and so forth. I mean, so the private sector is where people are more inclined to be like, we have this problem. And
that's why I really wanted you to participate in today's conversation where we had the mine kind of focus. They don't care if it's certified or not. They can utilize it. There's soil. There's land. So Anthony, go on.
Yeah. I mean, like I say, just the last on this, and I've talked to people in, say, TMR in Queensland, Transport Main Roads, and they're like, yeah, we do have this problem out in the Darling Downs or whatever. And invariably it was
to direct, and I want to make sure that everyone has a chance to finish up on time. I would like to continue the innovation conversation about how we find the solutions to problems sometimes that we think are difficult to solve, or sometimes we think that's solved, but actually how do we multiply the impact? Grant, who is here, is the multiplication solution to a thing that probably a lot of people think is already solved, hydro and so forth. So Grant, what I will do is I'll ask Maurice to give you co-host so you can just put up a couple of things. I want to be able to have this not a rushed conversation, so pop a few slides up if you have them, talk to them, and let's open the floor. But I will, at 25 past, bring things to a bit of a close, need to talk about the upcoming forum and so forth. So does that sound like a good plan, Grant?
Yeah, I'm happy with that. No problem.
Let's roll with it. Okay, we're in your hands.
Fantastic. Well, ladies and gentlemen, thank you very much for the opportunity to be here today. And Vlad, thank you for the invitation. We met yesterday. I gave him a brief idea as to what the idea was. He was blown away. He said we had to be part of this presentation. And I think that the power of the room is very much what we're after. We're after with the view for collaboration. We're after letters of intent. We're after for letters of support. We even for the opportunity of site opportunities with the view to test concept. I'm here with the view to present the idea called Spiral. It is owned by Stephen Hallberg, who's part of the group here today. He's the financial man, he's the technical man. So if there's any technical aspects you want to know, ask him. I'm the marketer. So what I do is I help businesses to grow and be relevant. I help businesses to be effective in what I call the tomorrow market, the market of where we're going to be in the tomorrow space. And one of the ideas with Stephen's idea was that it is all about how everything that we've spoken about this morning of how we can make a point of difference with the view to be effective going forward. And Vlad asked me very much with the view to just demonstrate the idea, and I'm demonstrating in the sense of 4 or 5 slides, and I'm not going to take up too much time, but on the basis of just what the idea is and how it fits into the organization. And with that, I'd very much like to open the floor as to people of interest or people of opportunity, where we could find the means to get this idea to launch into the world of sustainability and to be able to find solutions as to how we help the world going forward. We're living in a situation where we are under stress. We are living in the world of sustainability, living in the world of we're requiring power solutions, and we're financially strife in the sense of what projects cost in order to get things implemented going forward. But at the same time, civilization will grow. And this is where Stephen's idea would come to fruition. Let me share my screen with you very quickly.
And Grant, I would just want to highlight to others here is that, you know, the group, you know, the many people, there've been many voices over the year in the group about if only we could find projects that the group could support and so forth, and funding and this, and you know, there's all these different things. But what's important is, more powerful than anything else, is the ability to find those potential clients who would want to test things. So sometimes, and in fact, often when we bring technology to market, it's not about the cash, it's about the process, the demonstration. I think Ross was a really good example of that. They need trials, and I think this is very similar. That's why I thought it was a really good fit for our conversation today. You're looking for those clients, you're not looking for cash, none of that. Who wants to trial this? Where can it be trialed? So I just thought I'd put that up.
Very much so. So that's 100% correct, right? It's about where can we position this, where can we utilize it, where can we test case this scenario with the view to get validation in order to make sure that there's growth and scale attainable to this idea. The idea is dead simple, in the sense that there are 57,000 dams in the world today, and they all generate some form of power. So Stephen's idea was very much with the view to create a spiral with the view that you would utilize wherever there is flowing water, with the view that it could create additional power to that setup. So that means we don't need to go and build the new dams. We don't need to go and refurb old dams. We basically just create a plug and play system. So let me just share the concept. I think that's the most important part, and then we can talk about it a little bit thereafter. So basically, the spiral is a modular system that can be what you call plug and play, in the sense that of how it gets positioned. And very much when water has passed through a dam and has gone through its performance with the view to create energy, and then it's passed through the dam, it's 9 times out of 10 it is done. It's paid its dues. It's done its service. But basically, there's still energy that's very much then transitions past the dam going forward. So where this idea of the spiral is that this gets plugged into a form of a barrage, as to wherever there is any form of running water after the passing through of the dam. And basically what is great is that if it can be put into multiple uses or multiple devices with the view to create more power, and all that this really does is just add more additional power from already an infrastructure that is already built. So for example, what tends to transpire here is that the water flows, the propeller turns, we've got the generator, and all that really happens is that you use industrial, just standard mobilized cranes with the view to put it into place. The spiral installed basically just creates the usage of the barrage. And what you really want to do is just make sure that we can put this into that particular installation. So this visual here gives you a great idea of how it works. So very much in the sense as the water passes through the dam, you would set up your barrage of the spirals with a view to go forward. Should there be a maintenance issue on one, you merely just take it out, you put another one in, this one then can go back with the view to being effective. The materials that are being used are being specially designed with the view that it is of low maintenance as possible and as low breakdown or holdups as possible. And basically wherever there is a flow of water, we can play. So if the water is moving anything from 2 meters to 7 meters per second, is ideal for the operation with the view to create power and generate power. So this can go into any form of space where there is a flow of water, and this can then basically be set up, and it can basically scale accordingly. So depending on who and where and what, like I said before, there are 57,000 dams built in the world already. We can very much basically roll that out. So where we're looking right now is a proof of concept opportunity, be it on a mine or be it any other organization. Those are ultimately the areas that we're looking at with the view to go forward. Just so you get an idea, so where basically the spiral farm would sit is very much after the flow of the water is taking place. You can see here 2 examples of where there is movement, but through that movement we can then very much set up the barrage with the view to being effective. The whole point of this is that it's about adding additional power, be able to scale at a very low cost, and very much at the same time that it can plug and play just about anywhere in the world. Stephen's had the good opportunity of just having a discussion this week with Patio in Tasmania, where this was an example of one of the areas that's under discussion. It's just over 4.3 kilometers long, and within this particular narrow corridor of water, they can put anything between 400 to 500 units of the spirals with the view that can create additional power. So once again, there's no real more infrastructure or change to the land or the landscape. It's very, very much where there's existing infrastructure that's basically built and being put to bed. So I'm not going to talk too much further on this. I think it'll be good just to open it to the floor, and if there's any technical questions or any questions of interest, then maybe Stephen could possibly answer them going forward. But if you'd like to reach out to me, those are my details at this point in time, or you can connect with Vlad if there's anyone who feels value or where this project could possibly fit. We would greatly welcome the opportunity of discussion. And as I said, we're just looking for those forms of endorsement with the view to be able to grow and scale and create pivots in the world. Thank you very much.
No, amazing, Grant. Thank you so much. And don't feel you need to rush, but the questions from Bob, yes to all of the questions.
Okay.
All of the above, and Grant's background, because it's a little bit different, but yes, ad agency, 6 businesses around the world. Grant is quite an extraordinary individual who knows Anthony Gaddy quite well. So
I met him 2 years ago or 3 years ago, but I was looking at this and I thought it was wow. So he's finally got it.
So open the floor, Jennifer. Your hands up first. Jump in.
Thanks. So a couple of questions. If it's been around for 2 or 3 years, what's been the progress since then, and what's been the objections to progress since then? Look, I love the idea, and I see that actually, Bob, that this would be great for you, because what we need, so I specialize in digital integration with technologies. So I think the digital integration of this, being able to show how total power is enhanced by this, would be a great thing to include in the this proof of concept that you're going to do. I also want to just note that Nakuda.com is about finding those partners and putting the technologies together, because everybody needs to know about them. So I definitely could try and help you with that. And also, I work extensively with Melbourne Water, and they are part of my networking group. So I could probably introduce you to the innovation team there.
Amazing, Jennifer. That's just, Go ahead, Grant.
Fantastic. I think thank you very much for that, Jennifer, very much. Maybe Stephen, would you like to hop in there and just maybe answer some of your background to that, please?
Yes, hi, Jennifer. Thank you very much for that. And I must say, I'm very impressed with the valuable work that this group is doing. It's absolutely amazing. I didn't even know that you exist, but it's fantastic. Jennifer, to answer your first question, so we've been struggling because this is a small innovation and it's still in the early stage. We were really struggling, for quite a while to get the funding to do to optimize the turbine blade. We have manufactured a 1 to 12 scale blade that was tested by the Australian Maritime College, and they recommended that we need to optimize it through computer fluid dynamic and cavitation modeling. And then bed it down and then do the final proof of concept. So that's taken us a fair bit of time as well.
And that's done now. All of that proof of concept is finished?
No. We're in the process to securing the funding. The investment sentiment in Australia is absolutely, it's just shocking, and the support from the government is even worse. So we should have gone overseas with the funding. Which we tried to get in Australia. So yes, so all of the key partners have been lined up to Australian Maritime College, Melbourne University, the engineering firm, GE, and so on. Yeah.
So they've all been done. So just so for clarity, all these people are lined up, all of your testing is part done, and all you need is the prototype, the money to pay for the development and implementation of the prototype. Is that correct?
Yes, to test it in situ under actual conditions, because we just don't know. It's been tested in a test facility.
I wonder if Vlad, if Todd could help him with one of the projects.
Because I hadn't met Stephen, but I spoke with Grant, and what was interesting there is that investment is, you have investment lined up. It's the demo, like who would like to demonstrate in situ. So who would like to provide Stephen and the team a letter of intent saying, look, you build it, we want to put it in place, whether it be Melbourne Water, whether it be maybe one of the sites. And I actually, Raja, like I'm glad your hand is up, because I was actually wondering that the projects you're involved with hydro, power, push the water up, push the water down. What if in that process we could implement this multiplication of the energy through this process? So Raja.
Well, this is very interesting, because this is all about, as you say, efficiency improvement, right? So with some of the generators we have, they have small portfolios of hydro power plants.
Yeah.
And it'll be interesting to trial in that smaller scale. Of course, I've got some boring questions.
Mm-hmm.
So a lot of the water coming out of the dams are very turbulent. So, I don't know how it affects your turbine efficiency if you've got water coming in that is very turbulent. So that's a boring question. Second one, of course, is the first thing I look at it was the integrity of the installation, right? Because that's very turbulent, very fast, a lot of energy coming down out of those dams, and you've got this module. So I assume you would have to come up with some sort of installation method that would lock it in. And I assume all that boring questions is one of those key things that people are worried about, because we don't want modules flowing down the river, as we saw in Brisbane when they had a flood, and we got, things just uprooted. So, but it is such a very good principle of tapping into wasted energy. And what you're saying is exactly that. You're tapping into the so-called potential energy that is just being released in kinetic energy, and we're not capturing it.
Yeah.
So what work has been done in terms of those sort of structural integrity issue and flow issues?
So Bob, the integrity, that's part of the engineering. So some work has been done, but it hasn't been tested as well. If you look at a hydro dam, the downstream from a hydro dam, there's a portion that is the water is very turbulent, and then it starts stabilizing.
Yep.
So the modeling will include that and make sure that it is actually set up where the water is consistent and it's stabilized. The reason for the drag blade, for the Archimedes screw blade type, is to actually withstand significant turbulence rather than a lift blade.
Okay.
So a lift blade would probably and most likely bend, and that we've seen that in for example CGen when they put their technology in a tide, and there was a leap tide and the whole thing bent backwards. So so that will be part of the engineering to make sure and to test it in situ that it actually stabilized. So all of the whole turbine is installed in a 40-foot container frame. So you're looking at 4 to 5 ton of weight to actually stabilize it in any case.
Okay, but I think certainly I will be very happy to approach some of these power generators that have got these smaller hydro schemes, right?
Yep.
And to me, why not? Because you can straight away amplify by 20%, say 10-20% even,
Yeah.
and get that. Now, on a bigger scale, I assume studies will have to be done about what is the downstream effect, because when they build these dams, they do all these studies about water flow and erosion and all that stuff, So this will have a change, but it could be better change from what I could see,
It's not been installed and tested, so we don't know. We don't know.
But I'll take your contact, and I certainly would love to, and this is what we're all about, is to connect people to technologies. And some of these companies are getting appetites for trialing new things, because two things: they want to show that they are into innovation. So a lot of these companies have got people who've got titles called Future Energies. I met a guy yesterday from Origin Energy. His title is Manager, Flexibility and Future. And I thought, wow.
I need him in my life.
And I said to him, how did you get that? He said, well, because I used to work there as a maintenance manager, and he's now the maintenance manager. And he said, when he came back, he said, I don't want maintenance manager anymore, because this power plant is going to disappear. I want something to take me to the future. So he gave himself a new title. Wasn't it funny, James? James was there, and I thought, that's a classic.
No, thank you so much, Raja.
So we will connect, and let's see what happens, right?
Okay. No, thank you.
Can I invite Steve and yourself, those that you spoke to, and Grant? You see the sort of the work people are doing, those that you've met. If you're in a space where you want to connect with Grant or Stephen, please do. we can share the details. We can reach out to them directly. I know that conversation with Jennifer is imminent. I think that's important, especially with the work she's doing with Nakudu and those tech connections. I'm just mindful of everybody's time. Hong, I know you have a question. Can I just maybe bring us to a close to let those that need to go, because I need to make sure that one, thank everybody, and thank you everybody for the incredible participation. Like every time, I think 2 hours, wow, we can squeeze a lot in. I always think, damn, we should have done a little bit less so we can speak longer on those things. It always catches me by surprise at how incredible the conversation is and how engaged the community is. So it's one. Second thing is we have and I'll ask Anthony if you could just spend a couple of words on the forum that's coming up 18th of November. It is going to be mind-blowing from a circular economy perspective, materials, supply chains, everything like that. Anthony, would you be able to just say a couple of words and then we'll wrap up? And if people want to stay, ask some more questions, please do. But I think that's important. So, Anthony.
Sure, Vlad. I'll keep it to 1 minute because I feel like I've got to leave my own party in a sense. I'm parked outside an appointment and I've got to walk inside. Thank you so much for today's facilitation. Engaging, fast-paced, informative, fantastic as always. Thank you, Vlad. The forum on the 18th of November, I will ask Maurice to help share the link so anyone who hasn't registered can go and register. Essentially, we've got one of this country's top circular economy consultants and implementers. They are the group known as Choreo. It's a formidable combination, 2 sisters and 5 other women, the Morris sisters. They've done some unbelievable things. Their clients include BHP, Rio Tinto, Lend-Lease, City of Sydney, a number of other companies you'd recognize instantly. And the briefing that we've shared with them, what we've asked them to do is please to share case studies, to be very specific around what's going on, and also to issue a couple of very specific calls to action. We all want to do something. What is it that we can do by the end of the session? What action can we all take? It's another great opportunity to meet other people. You've seen today the like-mindedness and the shared values going in the direction of sustainability for the planet. It's exciting. It's so exciting that COP26 is occurring right now. So no doubt there'll be a number of conversations following that. I choose to be on the side of David Attenborough, and I believe that the answer can be found. I believe we have the intelligence. I believe that the vast majority of people in the world have the goodwill to do it. It's now just a question of us uniting and collaborating and connecting, as Jennifer George does so much of, and making things come true. Thank you so much for being here today, and really appreciate it.
Thanks, Anthony.
Thank you, Vlad. Awesome session.
That's
awesome.
okay.
Very, very good. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thanks so much. And those that need to leave, please feel that it is complete. But what we'll do is stay open for another, say, 15 minutes or so. Grant and Steve, if you're available to take some more questions, please. I know, Hong, we didn't get to your questions, so feel free to take the floor. So, and then Jennifer, jump in as well. So thank you, everyone. Feel free to stay. You don't feel like you need to leave. If you do, just give us a wave and we'll see you soon, especially at the forum. Hong, to you.
Thank you, Vlad, and that was a great section. I really enjoyed it. Thank you, and the conversation, the company with everyone. I suppose there was another question for Steve. Where are you?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, sure. So he was leaving, started moving, that kind of losing you.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you mentioned about you try to find the funding for the project. So I know a couple investment fund that they have invested in the past, those innovation projects. Are you open to those opportunities, or you stick with the bank?
So I'll leave that to Grant. He's dealing with on the funding side. Grant, do you want to take that?
Look, we'll talk to anyone. It comes down to getting the project to be real. So if there is of collaboration value, we'll definitely would entertain it. So there is no particular entity that we won't have a discussion with. Once again, I think you can see just by the example of the project of an existing structure in the sense of what's out there as to the volume of additional power that this could be. We're not picky on that space. It's a case of understanding the collaboration for the bigger picture where we'll have those discussions.
So if I may, so the there will be two more phases, pre-commercialization and commercialization phases that we have to go through, and it will require significantly more funding than what we've secured at the moment.
What kind of number are you talking about?
So the pre-commercialization, we've got a finite, a defined project scope, so between 5 and 7 million, and the commercialization will be 50 million plus, because you think about this, this is a global solution, Jennifer. It's not an Australian solution, and also the opportunities are not only for downstream hydro, it's city waterways, it's farming irrigation channels, it's desalination plants. So the application could be very significant. So it'll be almost like just the foundation funding to scale the project up.
Sure.
Can I move
Do
to
you
my,
understand?
oh, sorry. Go ahead, Hong. Sorry, I didn't realize.
Do you understand something cross to me, and then I can flick that to the other parties, see whether they're interested?
Yeah.
I will repost my contact details in the chat in a second.
Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
Sorry, could I just respond before I forget? You just mentioned just now was a number of low flow. We've already covered how high flow or high turbulence might affect your technology, but is there a low flow minimum where we actually get a limit of power delivered?
So it's more a question of commercially viability. So we've the models that I've personally built the model, the financial model to model 20-year profitability and commercials, and it's been audited by external auditors. And the minimum, the cutoff would be around 2 meters per second.
Okay, so you've got a 2 meter per second per minimum. Can you build it much smaller so that you could use it in smaller spaces? 40 foot is quite big. So could you scale it down by, say, a 10 scale and build it so that it would fit in within a normal suburban pipeline?
Jennifer, there's no reason why we couldn't scale it down. I mean, the turbine blade that we tested was a 1:12 scale blade. So to scale the whole thing down would not be a problem. The challenge, we just need to think about the logistics in the marine energy sector is a massive problem. So manufacturability, logistics, installation, and maintenance. So this technology actually addresses all of them. And the reason for the 20, and we can do it in a 20 foot container frame and a 40 foot container frame. So
my area is, my specialist area is commercialization. So working across 50 different industries, I've worked for 10 years in water. We need to pull this down and bring it to the minimum viable product that you could show your performance, and that could be done probably with under $1 million, I believe. So that you could, if you kind of scaled it back, designed it, work with the university, integrated some grant funding, that would be, because that's the risk part, is does the process work? And then the second risk part is, does the process work at scale in large turbulence? So, and this is to everyone, this is our problem with climate and everything, is making sure that what's the risk is actually the only part that's being costed into the model. If people start to put, and you've put, this is a global solution. Yes, it is. But first of all, we've got to look at it in that little tiny area where we have the smallest risk and the smallest amount of money. And then you can go from there, and then you'll get partners bit by bit by bit. So that's what we have to do with every one of the climate scenarios. We have to do is break it down. Where is the risk, and where do we need to take the risk out?
Fully agree with that. Yes.
And I'm sorry about the Australian risk adverse markets. I've got to add one more thing, is that solar panels were invented by Australians, and they were not taken up by Australia because of exactly what you're talking about. And what happened to them is they went out of patent, and a Chinese student took the solar panel to China and saw that there was a great opportunity, and we developed a multi-billion dollar industry, which we got nothing from. We need to change our attitudes and work together and believe in ourselves more than anything else.
Correct. Great,
I wanted to
Absolutely.
just step in quickly. Sorry, Vlad. I would work, obviously, my background is in the ANZ Bank, but any bank, you talked about approaching to get funding. Obviously, they all projects like this that obviously need money to fund their projects that they're not getting. I can understand your difficulties. I worked from bank to bank, and obviously that included any type of funding through Treasury, through security finance, so security loans. It means that the possibility of providing funding if you approach a bank is possible if you approach the right people.
Murray, do you think so? Maybe Grant might be a really worthwhile conversation as Grant through that. Murray, would you be kind enough to drop your contact details in the chat so that you and Grant can connect? Would you be happy to do that?
Yeah, I can do that.
That'd be amazing. And I noticed, Paige, and Paige, you've had your hand up, and David, I see you. Did you want to jump in, Paige?
Yeah, mine was more out of interest. If this turbine could be like added to offshore wind projects, if there's because I've read about like hydros that like if the tides rise and then when they go down, that kind of thing. So, because they could be serviced altogether, and just an idea.
So I'm happy, Grant, to field that question. So the short answer is yes. So if it's a tidal, so in the ocean there's three types of kinetic energy available. The one is tide. The tide go in and out, wave up and down, and then current. So the Carnegie, for example, it's an Australian company with $1 billion. They're worth about $10 or $20 million now. Wave is very, very, very challenging. But tidal, if there's a tide going through the area and the body of water, of course it can be. And the blade and the original design was for a bidirectional tidal solution. So yes, and that there's a patent pending on that.
Because I'm guessing like if you could install them with offshore wind projects as well, you could have it all in one place. And
so the answer is yes. And even oil rigs, to hang them on the side and the columns of the oil rigs and so on. So yes, the answer is yes.
I could see it also in desal. So where you actually are needing to provide power for the desal, that the actual flow in and flow out of the water in the desal actually is created. Currently, the Victorian desal plant uses solar credits because they planned on solar power. And they didn't have enough solar power site. They'd underestimated the amount of solar panels they needed. So they used solar credits. But if you actually went and re-looked at desal with this kind of a technology and then put a digital simulation into it to optimize it, and then looked at the flow of how you could create energy through the flow, then we could potentially put new water in a lot of areas where water is very sparse. So it creates a different financial model about making our usability of our space a completely different equation.
Absolutely. So desalination plants is a potential, definitely a potential application for this type of technology as well.
Stephen, can I recommend, just before, David, I see your hand up, thanks for being so patient. Just before we jump in, can I recommend connecting with Jennifer, having a conversation about some of the projects she's involved with? And I think I mentioned that before as well, obviously Melbourne Water and others. But the other one that would be worthwhile is that if you're not already part of the Australian Ocean Energy Group community, join that. Join it today. Like drop a message to Stephanie, say we're in, because there's an incredible conference that actually I've been very fortunate to be asked to facilitate the conversation at the end of November. it is exactly like what Paige was talking about, that mixed use, offshore renewables. How do they come together? There's incredible conversations both from Dutch Marine and Australian projects. It's going to be a great panel, but the community, if you're not already part of it, you've got to join. Immediately.
No, definitely. Yep. We will. Our group will. Yeah, no, thanks for that.
Introduction. I'll introduce you to Stephanie Thornton. She's been on here a number of times. She presented at the last forum as well. Like, absolutely incredible group, really supporting each other with this sort of project. So, David, amazing patience. Thank you. Go for it.
All right, I've been working here in the background. Thing that came to mind when you guys were talking about this is stormwater.
Mm-hmm. That's why I say the lower flow, the smaller.
Yep. Yeah. Everywhere, every urban environment has them. I was just having a look at the top 10 countries in the world with the most rainfall would be a good target market.
Absolutely. So I think the challenge will be to prioritize all those areas where that are ideal for this technology. And the beauty is with the technology, the contracts, as you know, typically are for 20 years. So once it's installed, and GE indicated that the maintenance is about 10 years. So you can install it and leave it for 10 years, or if there's a breakage, then you've got to obviously fix it. But you don't touch it for a very long time.
Yeah, I think that's a really great focus. Chris, go ahead. What we might do is, Chris, we may make this one the last.
Looks very simple.
Very simple.
It's in the simplicity. That's where the innovation lies. People overcomplicate things, and they look at marine energy is mega structures, and this is like a Lego set.
Yeah, that's right. Go ahead, Chris.
Okay, Paige asked my question, so thanks for that, Paige. But we fit out the wind energy companies around the world in our workwear. So I'm happy to have a conversation further about hooking up with those companies. And the other one is at Tas Hydro. We started the conversation with them a few months ago, so they could be worth a conversation with as well.
Yeah, so this is, this is the fabulous part that I looked at for Nakudu, for what everybody holds a piece of the puzzle. That connection you have with wind energy,
yes,
so valuable to everybody else. And then the Tas Hydro, I actually work with the University of Tasmania on their hydro projects. And I also have another member in my group who's working with Tasmania on the rare earths in Tasmania around the water areas. So kind of absolutely, we've got to be thoughtful, thinking, how can we share? How can we collaborate?
Yeah.
It's so exciting. And Vlad, thank you so much for inviting me today.
Okay, my pleasure. And I noticed, Stephen, that in your slide, the grant showed that Tas Hydro is a conversation you're having.
Yes, we had a meeting, very, very exciting meeting yesterday with the hydroelectrical engineer that runs the strategy and innovation team. And he's going to take it away. So he actually nominated that area and said it would be ideal to test and install it in a. It's a 4.3 kilometer. It's a channel. It's one of the few underground hydro plants in the world, and it uses thermal water and spring. I don't know how it works, but it comes out and there's 4.3 kilometers of just straight. It's a channel that they've actually built. He said that would be absolutely ideal to install it there.
Excellent. And so what's stopping him?
So he's just needs approval. So which he's busy preparing for Hydro Tasmania to support us and provide us with the facilities and the support that we require for the testing as well. So it's still early discussions that we're having.
Exciting.
So I'm just thinking if you could act really quickly. There's a grant open open for the next 2 weeks. Sounds like you have a partner. You have a large industrial partner, corporate partner. You also have a research entity. And that's all that's needed. If you could get them to pull together, really act really quickly, there's $3 million up for grabs. If one of them could put some money into it, it has government matching. But you have to be able to say, okay, we've got all these people, then we've got exactly the right person who could write that for you.
Yep. No, we'll definitely look into that as well. Jennifer,
yeah, but it has to be really quick.
Yeah, we've applied for grants in the past, and the hoops that we had to go through was just absolutely incredible. I had, we paid professional accounting firms to prepare the grant, and it costed, a fair bit of money anyway. So we'll.
So I mean, again, I want to just refer, this idea of having a community is to know who to work with and who not to work with. Tawab is a member of this group. His success rate is in the 70% range, and he does not charge an arm or a leg, right? So it's really, we all as entrepreneurs, and I'm an entrepreneur too, I start up companies, right? So I know that there's this big pull to work with really big companies who actually think, we think that their name will help us, but there are really trusted smaller companies who can really deliver and connect us. And as you say, this is all about connecting all of the right people here. And if you could act fast, you could get something done.
And Stephen, Grant, I've taken the action. Like Jennifer's mentioned it, but I already had it here. Introduce you for a conversation to tow up. It's going to be fairly quick. And the test will be, are the right parties involved?
Yeah, if really you could bring, or if you could circle them up, you could get the cat circled within a day. We could get you this money.
Fantastic.
That's one within a day. Should your challenge, should you choose to?
I'm happy to
You've only got 2 weeks.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
All right, that's wonderful. Thank you. So I'll take that action, Stephen. I'll do the introduction straight away so that you can have that chat. All right. Listen, thank you, everyone. It's been absolutely phenomenal. Maurice, thank you for making it all work so smoothly. And recording, we'll share this recording on the channel, on the 02030 Hub channel. We're actually doing a bit of a cleanup. So, it's one of those things where you don't realize quite how extraordinary the last 12 months have been. So the next session will be in December, a couple of weeks after the forum. And we're going to have a very open session, I think, around politics, making a difference in that way. So a little less tech, a little bit more personal and voting and the like. So that's going to be very interesting to have a session like that. So again, thank you everyone for all your energy and your effort. Maurice, thank you for making sure that we all run properly. And enjoy your weekend, everyone.
Thank you. Thanks, you
all
too.
The best. Take care.
Thank you, Vlad. Thank you for the team. Thanks,
everyone. Thank you.